I still set a plate for her every year. The candle wax still smelled like her perfume. I guess habits outlive love. 10 years gone, and yet I can't eat without feeling she's still here. Margaret, my wife, my home. I was setting the table that morning, one chair empty, when I heard the door open. My children. David, Linda, and Mark walked in together. David looked like a stranger in his own house, wearing a suit too expensive for a family dinner. Linda smiled softly, pretending nothing had changed. Mark stayed quiet, eyes moving from me to the old walls like he was afraid to touch the air. "I'm glad you came," I told them. "Your mother would have wanted this." No one answered. Only the clock filled the silence. I began reading the short prayer your mother wrote before she died. I'd read it every year. My voice cracked halfway through. And that's when I heard it, David's laugh. A small one, but sharp enough to cut the room in half. I looked up. He shrugged. "Sorry, Dad. I just thought about the house." That laugh felt like a knife made of memory. The air froze. Even the clock seemed to stop ticking. For a moment, no one spoke. Linda's face turned pale. Mark stared at David like he couldn't believe what he'd just said. And I felt something twist inside me. That laugh wasn't about memory. It was about ownership. I sat down, too tired to argue. My hands reached for the family album lying on the table, the same one your mother made with her hands, each page filled with proof that we once loved each other. Between two old pages, I saw a small envelope, yellow and cracked with her handwriting, for Robert, only when they forget. That day I lost more than peace. I lost my place in my own home. Would you forgive your child if they sold your memories? Dinner that night felt heavier than the air around us. I could hear the faint scrape of forks and the clink of glasses, but no one dared to say much. Even the smell of roasted chicken, Margaret's old recipe, felt wrong without her laughter filling the room. David sat straight, scrolling on his phone between bites like he couldn't wait to leave. Linda kept looking at me, forcing a small smile every few seconds, as if to remind herself this was supposed to be a warm family evening. Mark didn't eat much. He watched the rest of us in silence, the way someone watches a storm form on the horizon. "Dad," Linda said softly, "this is really nice." I didn't realize how much I missed this table. I nodded. "Your mother used to say this house felt smaller when it was quiet." David chuckled without looking up. "It feels old, that's for sure." Mark's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "You could try appreciating it instead of insulting it." "I'm not insulting anything," David said. "I'm being realistic. This house could use some updates, electrical, plumbing. Value's probably decent now, though." I put my glass down slowly. "Value," he shrugged. "I'm just saying it's prime property, Dad." Linda looked at him sharply. "David, can we not talk about money right now?" He smirked. "I'm just making conversation." But the tone in his voice carried something heavier than conversation. It sounded like planning. I turned to Mark. "How's work, son?" He blinked, surprised. "Same as always. Keeps me busy." Then, glancing at his brother, "Busy enough to not worry about what isn't mine." David set his fork down, jaw tight. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," Mark said quietly, "unless it means something to you." They stared at each other for a long second. I felt my chest tighten. I remembered when they were boys wrestling in the yard while Margaret yelled at them to stop before someone got hurt. Now here they were again, grown men still finding new ways to bruise each other. I cleared my throat. "Why don't we look through the album? Your mother would have liked that." Linda smiled with relief. "Yes, please. It's been years since I've seen those pictures." I reached for the album. The leather cover was cracked edges curling like the bark of an old tree. Margaret had made it herself, every page glued, written and dated in her neat handwriting. She believed that photos could hold families together the way prayers held faith. I opened the first page. A photo of our wedding faded at the corners. Margaret's eyes shone brighter than the white dress she wore. I could still smell her perfume just looking at it. Linda traced the image with her finger. She was so beautiful. "She still is," I whispered. David leaned back, arms crossed. "It's a nice picture. Nostalgic." "Nostalgic," Mark repeated. "That's your word for Mom." David sighed. "Look, I'm not trying to be cold. It's just, she's gone, Mark. We can't live in these pictures forever." Linda's voice cracked. "You don't get it. This, she pointed to the album, isn't just pictures. It's everything she left us. David met her eyes. She left us the house, too. That's something real. The room went still again. His words landed like stones on a fragile floor. I looked at him carefully. Why do you keep talking about the house, David? He hesitated, glancing at me, then down at his phone. No reason, just making sure things are in order. In order? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. What does that mean? He smiled thinly. Relax, Dad. You already signed everything last year. I just wanted to make sure you still remember. The fork fell from my hand, clattering against the plate. Linda's head snapped toward him. What are you talking about? Mark's voice rose. Signed what David exhaled, exasperated, like a man explaining something simple to a child. The will, Kay. The property transfer. Dad signed it over to me. I just thought now's as good a time as any to make it official. My pulse roared in my ears. What did you just say? You don't remember, he asked calmly. You were at my lawyer's office. Everything was notarized. Linda gasped. Dad, that can't be true. You'd never— I didn't— I said, my throat dry. I never signed anything. David frowned. Maybe you forgot. It was last June. I stared at him, at the son I'd raised with my own hands, who used to run barefoot in the same kitchen, begging for ice cream before dinner. He couldn't even meet my eyes now. Why would you think I'd give you the house? I asked quietly. Because you said once you didn't want us fighting over it, David said. I thought maybe you were being generous. Generous, Mark barked out a laugh, cold and sharp. You mean desperate. Enough, Linda snapped. Both of you. But David kept talking like he had rehearsed this speech for months. I just want to take care of things before they get complicated. You're not getting any younger, Dad. Someone has to handle the paperwork. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. So you took it upon yourself to decide that someone was you. He didn't answer. That silence said everything. Linda pressed her palms to her face. David, please tell me this isn't what it sounds like. He looked at her, then me. I'm just trying to protect what's ours. Mark muttered. You mean what's yours? I pushed the chair back, the legs scraping the floor. That's enough. Everyone froze. The album lay open on the table, the faces inside smiling up at us from a world that no longer existed. Margaret's handwriting curled beneath each photo, little notes, jokes, moments frozen in time. I thought of her laughter, of her voice calling the kids for dinner, of how she made this house more than walls. I turned to David. I want you to bring me that document. He looked uneasy. What for? Because I want to see the thing you claim I signed. He hesitated. Dad. Bring it, I repeated. Tomorrow, after lunch. The room held its breath. David nodded slowly. Fine. I looked down at the album again. One of the pages had begun to tear at the corner. I ran my finger along the rip, wondering how something so old could still break so easily. Linda whispered, Dad, are you okay? I forced a smile that felt nothing like one. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just tired. But I wasn't fine. Something deep inside me knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was something darker. Something planned. That night after they left, I sat alone at the table. The candles had melted down to stubs. I turned one of the photos toward me, Margaret in the garden sunlight caught in her hair. I wish you were here, I said. They've already started forgetting. And for a moment, I could almost hear her answer. Sometimes one signature is all it takes to erase a lifetime of love. That night, long after my children had gone home, I sat alone with the album in front of me. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. The air carried the faint scent of candles, the kind Margaret used to light every Sunday evening. I opened the first page and felt time pull me backward to when this house was more than a property line on paper. It was a promise. We bought this place 42 years ago. I still remember the day we signed the mortgage papers. We didn't have much back then, just a beat-up pickup truck, a few boxes of clothes, and dreams too big for our pockets. But when Margaret walked through that front door for the first time, she smiled like we'd stepped into heaven. This is it, she said. Our forever home. The paint was peeling, the roof leaked, and the floorboards creaked like they were whispering secrets. But she loved every flaw. She painted the walls herself, humming to old country songs on the radio while I fixed the plumbing with more hope than skill. We built it piece by piece, the same way we built our life together, one compromise at a time. Margaret was the heart of everything. She filled this house with smells, fresh bread, lavender soap, cinnamon at Christmas. She said a home should always smell alive. And she was right. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still smell her perfume in the hallway. The album came later. It started as her little project one summer. She said photographs were proof that love existed even after the people were gone. I laughed at her, said memories were enough. But she didn't listen. She never did when she believed in something. Every week she'd paste new pictures into it: birthdays, school recitals, messy dinners, snowmen in the yard. She'd write small notes underneath in her looping handwriting. David's first tooth, Linda's broken arm, Mark's first day of school. That book became our family's heartbeat. Whenever life got hard, she'd open it and say, "See, we've survived worse." One evening, years later, she was sitting at the table with Linda. Her hands had begun to tremble, but her voice was still strong. I overheard her telling Linda, "Your brother David, he wants more than he needs. He's got your father's fire, but not his patience. When I'm gone, promise me you'll keep him grounded." Linda laughed softly, not understanding the weight of those words then. Neither did I. Margaret looked at me from across the room and smiled. "Don't worry, Rob," she said. "Our family might bend, but it won't break." I believed her, until the day she didn't wake up. After the funeral, I couldn't bring myself to touch the album. It stayed on the same shelf for years, gathering dust while I learned how to live with the silence. Sometimes, when the wind blew through the curtains, I thought I heard her voice whispering my name, like the house itself remembered her better than I could. When Linda visited last spring, she found it while cleaning. She asked why I'd never finished it. I told her I didn't have the strength. Margaret had left the last page blank, waiting for one more memory we never got to make. I run my fingers over that final page now. The paper is brittle, the glue yellowed. There's a faint outline of where a photo should have been. She had written something small at the bottom corner, just one unfinished sentence. For Robert? The rest of the ink had faded away. I closed the album and stared at the wall where her picture hung. In that moment, I realized I'd been keeping this house alive for her, not for me. Every nail, every photograph, every crack in the wall carried her fingerprints, and now the very thing she built to hold us together might be what tears us apart. Some memories fade with time, others wait quietly to be remembered. David came the next afternoon just like he said he would. I'd barely slept. The house felt heavier somehow, like it knew what was coming. I'd made coffee I didn't drink and sat at the same table where everything had started. The family album was still there, closed now, but its presence pressed on me like a heartbeat I couldn't escape. He arrived alone at first, carrying a black folder under his arm. The sound of his shoes against the floorboards reminded me of the day he took his first steps, tiny feet pounding these same planks while Margaret clapped her hands. Now, each step felt like a warning. "Afternoon, Dad," he said, too casual. I brought the paperwork. "Paperwork?" I repeated, tasting the word. "You mean the will?" He hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, the will. I figured we should go over it together." Linda and Mark showed up a few minutes later. They didn't want me facing him alone. Linda looked pale but determined. Mark's jaw was tight enough to crack. David greeted them with a short nod, the kind you give people you've already decided you don't trust. He laid the folder on the table and slid it toward me. "Everything's right here." I opened it. There it was, my name, the address of the house, the notary stamp, and a clean blue signature at the bottom that looked exactly like mine. For a moment, my breath stopped. It was my handwriting, every curve, every line, except something was off. The way the R slanted, it leaned left. Mine always leaned right. Mark leaned closer. "Dad, is that really your signature?" I swallowed hard. "It looks like it, but no, it's not." I looked at David. "You said this was notarized." He nodded. "Yes, my lawyer's assistant was the witness. She'll confirm it." Linda spoke up, voice trembling. "David, this isn't a misunderstanding, is it?" "Tell us you didn't fake this." David stiffened. "You think I forged our father's signature?" "Really?" "No," Mark said coldly. "We know you would if it got you what you wanted." David slammed his hand on the table. "Don't start that, Mark. You've hated me since we were kids." "I hated what you did," Mark shot back. "And look at you, you're still doing it." I raised a hand. "Enough." They froze. The silence between us was the kind that hums. I turned the document around, studying it again. Everything was too clean, too deliberate. Even the date, June 18th, 2023, stood out like a bruise. June 18th. I whispered it to myself, trying to remember. My mind went blank. Then flashed sunlight, laughter, Margaret's old picnic blanket. June 18th, I muttered. That was the day we went to Green Lake Park. David frowned. What are you talking about? You remember, I said. Linda brought sandwiches. Mark grilled. You complained about the heat all afternoon. That was the same day you claim I signed this. He looked down. I don't know. Dates get mixed up. No, I said quietly. They don't. Linda's voice wavered. Dad, you were with us all day. You didn't leave the park. Mark nodded. You never left. Not for a minute. David rubbed his temples. Look, I don't remember every hour of every day. Maybe you're mixing it up. I closed the folder slowly. No, son. I think you're the one mixing things up. He shifted in his chair. His confidence began to crack, the edges of his words losing shape. I could see the boy he used to be, the one who'd lie about breaking a window and then hide behind tear. Dad, I swear. Don't, I said. Don't swear on her name. He shut his mouth. Linda whispered, I think Mom would have seen this coming. That hit him. His shoulders tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Mark leaned forward. Then explain it. Explain how Dad's signature ended up on a will he never signed. David's jaw worked, no words coming out. Then with a shaky laugh he said, You really think I'd risk everything over a piece of paper? Risk, I asked, or gain? His silence was the answer I already knew. The front door creaked open just then, and a young woman stepped in, a nervous-looking assistant clutching her purse. Mr. Thompson sent me, she said. He asked me to witness Mr. Miller's confirmation of the will. David shot to his feet. You didn't have to come inside, he said quickly. I told you I'd handle it. The woman looked confused. I just thought. Linda's voice cut through the air. Handle what exactly? David turned on her. Stay out of it. But the woman flinched and took a step back. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, I didn't mean to intrude. I was told you needed someone to verify your signature. I stood up slowly. My signature? Or his story? She glanced at David, then at me. I don't know. He said you'd signed last June at his office. Mark folded his arms. Was there a notary present? She blinked. No, just me. Mr. Thompson said it was fine. The room fell silent. Linda gasped. So there wasn't even a legal witness, David snapped. It doesn't matter, it's still valid. No, I said, my voice steady now. It's not. He turned toward me defiant. You can't prove that. I picked up the folder, feeling the weight of the paper between my fingers. Maybe I can't. But the truth has a way of showing up whether you invite it or not. He scoffed. You always were dramatic. Maybe, I said, but I've also always been honest. For a long moment, none of us spoke. David's face was flushed, his breathing uneven. The woman, clearly regretting every life choice that led her here, mumbled an apology and backed out of the house. When the door closed, the silence that followed was worse than yelling. Linda's voice broke it first. Dad, what are you going to do? I'm going to find out who my son has become, I said. David's eyes flashed. I'm still your son. I nodded slowly. Then act like it. He looked away. I reached for the album again, almost without thinking. Something told me the answer was inside that book. The leather felt warm under my hands, as if it had been waiting. I turned the pages carefully, one by one, until I reached the summer of 2023. And there it was, a photo of all of us at Green Lake Park. Margaret's old blanket spread on the grass, Linda pouring lemonade, Mark holding the grill tongs, and me sitting on a bench with David beside me, both of us laughing at something small and stupid. The date printed on the edge, June 18th, 2023, the same day he claimed I'd signed away my home. My throat tightened. Here, I said quietly, sliding the album toward him. You said I signed the will that day. Tell me, when did I have time to do that? David stared at the photo. His mouth opened, then closed. His skin lost color. Maybe it was another day, he whispered. No. Linda said, her voice trembling. This was that weekend. I remember because Mom's anniversary was the day before. Mark reached out and touched the corner of the photo. His brows furrowed. Dad, look. One corner of the picture was torn as if someone had tried to remove it. A thin strip of paper was missing, clean, deliberate. Who tore this? Linda whispered. David's hand twitched. David, I asked. He said nothing. Mark's eyes narrowed. What did you do? I didn't do anything, David snapped. It must have been old. It wasn't, I said quietly. This page was whole when your mother made it. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mark stood, walked around the table, and reached for David's jacket. Let me see your pockets. Get off me, David shouted, pushing him away. But as he did, something small fluttered from his coat pocket and landed on the floor. Linda bent down and picked it up. It was a torn piece of photo paper, edges, jagged color faded. She pressed it against the missing corner. It fit perfectly. We all just stared. David looked at the floor, his mouth trembling. Why would you do that? Linda whispered. He didn't answer. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, a sound louder than any voice in the room. Linda's hands were shaking as she held the photo in place. No one spoke, not even the house. It was like the walls themselves were listening. Mark broke the silence first. So that's it, isn't it? You tore it out because you knew this picture could ruin your little story. David's eyes darted between us. You don't understand. I understand enough, I said. My voice sounded older than I'd ever heard it. You lied to me. I didn't lie. He stood desperate now. I just borrowed an opportunity. Borrowed, Linda snapped. You forged Dad's name, David. His chest rose and fell fast. I didn't forge anything. I copied it just to get the process started. The bank needed proof of ownership before they'd talk about refinancing. Refinancing, Mark repeated. For what? David looked away. My mortgage. I felt my stomach drop. You're in debt. He nodded once, then louder, angry now. Yes, I'm drowning, okay. I lost work, the bills piled up, and I was out of options. They were going to take our house, mine and Karen's. I just needed something to hold them off. I was going to fix it later. Linda's voice cracked. You were going to fix it by stealing the only thing Mom left us. I wasn't stealing, he shouted. You think I wanted this? I thought if I could get a line of credit against this property, I could pay everything off and give it back later. No one would even know. Mark shook his head. So you decided to gamble with Dad's name. I was trying to save my family. David said, his voice breaking. No, I said quietly. You were trying to save yourself. He froze. Linda wiped her eyes. Mom trusted you the most. You were supposed to look after us. David's expression twisted, pride, shame, exhaustion, all fighting at once. Don't talk to me like you're saints. You both walked away from this house years ago. I'm the only one who stayed in town. I've been checking on Dad every month while you were busy with your perfect lives. Mark's tone went low and cold. And you did it out of love, right? Out of guilt, maybe. Out of necessity, David barked. None of you know what pressure feels like. Pressure, I said. You think you're the only one who's ever carried a burden. Your mother carried this family on her back for 40 years, and she never once betrayed it. David's face twisted. Don't bring her into this. She's already in it, I said. Everything in this room is her. He looked at the album, the photo still in Linda's hand, and something in him cracked. His eyes filled, but his voice hardened. You think she'd want us tearing each other apart over a stupid house? Linda whispered. She'd want us to remember what it means to be family. She'd want peace, he muttered. Peace doesn't come from deceit, I said. He stepped forward, suddenly snatching the album off the table. Then maybe it shouldn't come from this. Maybe all this, these pictures, these memories are the reason none of us move on. David, stop! Linda screamed. He gripped the spine of the album, ready to rip it in half. Instinct took over. Linda lunged forward and grabbed it, her voice raw. Don't you dare touch her memory. The room exploded with sound chairs, scraping voices, shouting the thud of struggle, and then silence again. David let go. The album fell shut between us. He stood there, breathing hard, hands shaking, eyes red. You don't get it, he whispered. I'm tired of feeling like the bad guy. I tried to fix everything. I thought maybe for once I could be the one who saved the family instead of disappointing it. I stepped closer, softer now. By breaking it, he didn't answer. A tear slid down his cheek and he wiped it away angrily. Mark whispered, You could have come to us. We would have helped. David laughed bitterly. Help, you mean judge. You both judge me every time I breathe. Linda's voice was gentle again. We judge the choices, not you. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of all those years, the resentment, the pride, the love that had curdled hung thick in the air. Finally, David looked at me. So what happens now? Dad, you going to call the cops, have your own son arrested? I stared at him. I thought of the day he was born, how small he looked in my arms, how Margaret had cried from joy. The same hands that once reached for mine were now trembling empty. "No," I said. "I'm not calling anyone, but you're going to make this right." He swallowed. "How you'll call your lawyer and withdraw that document. I'll have mine present, and you'll tell the truth, every word of it." He nodded slowly, defeated. "And if I don't, then you'll lose more than a house," I said. "You'll lose me." His eyes filled again, but he didn't argue. Linda put the photo back in the album, smoothing the torn edge like she could heal it. "We'll figure it out," she said, though no one believed her. Mark stood by the window, staring out at the street. "You ever think," he said quietly, "that maybe Mom knew something like this would happen?" David looked up, confused. "What are you talking about?" Mark turned back to us. "She wrote something on the last page of the album. I saw it years ago but never mentioned it. It was sealed under tape. I thought it was just another note." "What did it say?" Linda asked. "I don't remember exactly," Mark said. "Something about home not being about walls, something about togetherness." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Margaret always had a way of leaving words behind when we needed them most. David let out a long breath. "Then maybe she can fix what I ruined." I looked at him. "Maybe she already is." We stood there a while, no one daring to touch the album again. It lay between us like a witness, the proof of everything we once were and everything we'd become. As they left that evening, David stopped at the door. His voice was small, almost childlike. "Dad, I didn't mean to hurt you." I nodded. "That's the problem, son. You didn't mean to, but you did." He lowered his eyes and walked out. Linda and Mark lingered a moment longer. "Do you think he'll fix it?" Linda asked. "I think guilt is a louder teacher than I ever was," I said. When the door closed behind them, I opened the album again, tracing the spot where the photo had been torn. The image still fit even with the rip. It just needed to be held together. So did we. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret sitting across from me, smiling the way she did when the children fought over dessert. "Be patient with them," she used to say. "They'll learn." Maybe she was right. Maybe love wasn't about being right. It was about staying. I looked around the room at the worn furniture, the fading wallpaper, the life we built and almost lost. And I made myself a promise, before this house saw another sunrise, I would find the truth in every page she left behind. A picture can't lie, but it can reveal who truly does. That night the house felt emptier than it ever had. The arguments had faded, but their echoes lingered in the corners of every room. I sat alone at the table again, the same table where my family used to laugh until midnight, and now even the air felt afraid to move. The album lay open before me. The torn photo had been pressed back into place, though the rip was still visible, a scar we couldn't hide. I traced the tear with my finger. It felt like touching a wound that hadn't healed, one that belonged to all of us. I don't know how long I sat there. Time doesn't move the same way after a betrayal. It slows down, like it wants you to stare at every mistake you made until you finally see yourself in them. I thought about David, his voice breaking, his hands shaking, his desperate eyes begging me to understand. And the worst part was, I did. Because once, a long time ago, I'd made my own kind of foolish bargain too. When we first bought this house, I'd promised Margaret we'd pay it off in 15 years. But after the third work got slow, money got tight, and I nearly sold the deed behind her back. I never told her. She found out anyway. She didn't yell. She just looked at me, eyes soft, and said, "Rob, you can't fix something by giving it away." I never forgot that. But somehow, David had lived it without hearing it. I leaned back in my chair and looked around the room. Her things were still here, the embroidered curtains, the glass angel on the shelf, the framed wedding photo she refused to replace no matter how faded it became. Everything she'd touched had outlived her, and somehow outlived us too. For a while I just talked to her like she was sitting across from me. "You were right again, Margaret," I said quietly. "They're forgetting." I tried, but I couldn't hold them together. The silence that followed felt almost like an answer. Maybe she was still here somewhere in these walls, still watching, still waiting for us to remember what she'd built. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. It was Linda. She stood there with a small thermos of tea in her hands, her face red from crying. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Can I come in?" I nodded. She poured us both a cup sitting beside me at the table. For a long time, neither of us said anything. The smell of chamomile filled the air. Finally, she spoke. "I found something, Dad. In Mom's old phone. It was still in the drawer upstairs." I frowned. Her phone, she nodded and pressed play. It was her voice, Margaret's. "Rob. If you're listening," she began softly, "don't let them forget what home means." I couldn't breathe. The sound of her voice filled every empty space in me. Linda set the phone down, tears slipping down her cheeks. She must have recorded it near the end. Maybe she knew we'd need it. I looked at the album again. "She always knew more than the rest of us." Linda nodded. "David's lost Dad, but maybe he's scared, not cruel." Her words hit something deep in me. Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was tired. Tired of carrying the weight of what we'd built and what we'd broken. Tired of pretending love was only soft and forgiving when sometimes it hurt worse than hate. "I know," I said finally. "He's still my son." She smiled faintly. "He still needs you to be." We sat in silence for a long while. I poured more tea just to have something to do with my hands. The clock ticked on the wall, slow and steady, the only sound left in the world. When she left, I stayed behind. The house was quiet again, but it felt different now. Not empty, just waiting. I looked down at the album one last time. The pages were worn thin, the ink smudged, the memories fading, but the love inside it felt alive, as if it had been breathing while we weren't looking. Margaret had sealed one final page. I'd never opened it, not even after she died. I told myself it didn't matter, but tonight I knew better. If her voice could find its way back to me, maybe her message could too. I ran my thumb over the last page, feeling the edge where the paper met the tape. My heart was steady now, not racing, not afraid, just ready. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "I'll open it. Maybe then I'll finally hear her answer." But even as I said those words, I wondered if forgiveness could truly mend what had already been torn. Because the truth is, forgiveness doesn't rebuild walls, it only opens the door. And I wasn't sure if David would ever walk through it. That night, I walked through the hallway, touching the walls Margaret once painted. Each brushstroke was still there, faint but visible. She used to laugh when the paint dripped. "It's okay," she'd say. "Mistakes just mean it's ours." I stood by the doorway of David's old room. His baseball gloves still sat on the shelf dust, gathered in the palm. The posters had curled at the edges, the colors faded. I remembered how proud he looked the day I bought him that glove. He said, "I'll never let it go." I smiled at the memory and realized he had just not in the way I feared back then. I moved on to Linda's room, still neatly kept. Books lined the shelves, the same ones she used to read to her mother when the chemo made her too tired to talk. I could still hear her voice echoing softly through those nights, steady, gentle, refusing to cry until the door was closed. In Mark's room, bare, quiet, almost untouched. He'd left for college and never really came back. But he was the one who visited most after she passed. He never said much, just fixed whatever broke and sat beside me like silence was enough. Standing there, I realized I'd been clinging to this house, not because of what it was, but because of who I lost inside it. And maybe that's what Margaret meant by home. Not the walls, not the deeds, not the arguments about who owns it. Home was the space between us, the laughter, the fights, the forgiveness we kept finding our way back to. I went back to the table, the album still waiting under the lamp's soft light. For Robert, only when they forget. I whispered, "They've forgotten Margaret. But maybe not for long. Tomorrow I'll open the last page, and if your words are still there, I promise I'll listen." Sometimes forgiveness isn't something we give, it's something we return to. The morning came quietly, like the world was holding its breath. Light poured through the curtains, pale and soft, touching the floorboards with a golden warmth I hadn't felt in years. I made a cup of coffee I didn't need, sat at the table and stared at the album still waiting where I left it. Last night's storm of voices was gone now, replaced by a silence that didn't hurt as much as before. Maybe this was what peace looked like, fragile, hesitant, but real. I ran my hand over the cover. The leather felt smooth in some places, worn thin in others like it had aged with us. Margaret's handwriting peeked out from the edges of the last page, sealed under brittle tape that had turned yellow over time. I hesitated. My hands trembled. It felt like I was about to open a doorway to the past one I might not be ready to walk through. I peeled the tape back slowly. The glue resisted like it didn't want to let go. Then the page lifted and there it was, a photograph I'd never seen before. It stopped me cold. It was the five of us. Margaret, the kids, and me standing on the porch the summer she found out about her illness. She looked radiant, though. I remembered how scared we all were that day. Her hand was on my arm, her smile soft and certain. Linda was holding the camera remote. David's arm was slung around Mark's shoulder. For once, no one was fighting. We looked like a family. Underneath the photo, written in Margaret's looping script, were words that made my chest tighten. Home isn't built from walls. It's held by forgiveness. I read it again and again, until the letters blurred into tears. All this time I'd thought she meant the house, the bricks, the furniture, the memories trapped inside. But no, she was talking about us, about what keeps a family standing even when everything else falls apart. I felt her there with me. I swear I did. Not as a ghost, not as an echo, but as a presence steady, warm, familiar. The kind that stays even when you think you've lost it. Forgiveness, I whispered. You always make it sound so easy. I sat there for a long while, letting the sunlight fall across the photo. It seemed to glow her smile brighter than I remembered. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I reached for the phone and dialed David's number. It rang twice before he answered. His voice was quiet, hoarse. Dad. I opened the last page, I said. He didn't reply right away. I could hear him breathing like he didn't know whether to hang up or cry. There's something your mother wanted us to remember, I continued. She said home isn't made of walls, it's held by forgiveness. A sound caught in his throat. I don't deserve that, Dad. Maybe not, I said. But forgiveness isn't something you deserve. It's something you try to live up to. He was silent for a long moment, then his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix what I did. You start by telling the truth, I said gently. You don't owe me the house, son. You owe me honesty. Come home. There was a pause, then a quiet, broken, okay. When the call ended, I sat still for a moment, the phone warm in my hand. The house felt lighter somehow, as if it had been waiting for those words. I turned back to the photo, tracing Margaret's handwriting again. You built this, didn't you? I whispered. You knew one day we'd forget what it meant. The sunlight climbed higher, spilling across the table, over the album, over the worn wood. I could almost see her hand in that light, steady, patient, guiding me the way she always did. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Maybe she hadn't left after all. Maybe she'd just been waiting for me to open the right page. I closed the album softly, my hands no longer trembling. The coffee beside me had gone cold, but I didn't care. I looked around the kitchen, the chipped tiles, the old clock, the faded curtains, and for the first time, it didn't look like a prison of memories. It looked like home again. I whispered to the empty room. She built this house once. Maybe now it's my turn to rebuild what's left. Outside, a bird landed on the porch rail and began to sing. It wasn't much, but it sounded like beginning again. Sometimes rebuilding starts with a single open door. The afternoon light spilled gently across the kitchen table, the same place where every argument had started, and maybe where something could finally end. I heard the knock before I saw him. David stood at the door, no folder, no lawyer, no defense. Just him, tired, pale, holding a small wooden frame wrapped in an old handkerchief. I found this in Mom's closet, he said quietly. Thought maybe you'd want it. He handed it to me like it might break. Inside the frame was a picture I hadn't seen in years, Margaret in the garden sunlight catching her hair, the same smile that could stop time. The photo was worn at the edges, but it was still her. I nodded. Thank you, son. He looked around the kitchen, his voice small. It feels different in here. It should, I said. Something finally let go. He smiled almost sadly. I don't know if I deserve to be here. Maybe not, I said. But you came anyway. That's a start. We sat down together. For a while, neither of us spoke. The album was still on the table, open to the last page. David reached out and turned it carefully like he was afraid of touching a ghost. Then, he froze. Dad, there's something behind the photo. He lifted the picture gently. A second piece of paper had been tucked underneath all this time, thin, yellowed, barely legible. Margaret's handwriting again small and slanted. If you're reading this, I trust you finally understood this home was never mine. It was always yours, together. David stared at the words, then looked at me. His lips trembled. She knew, he whispered. She knew we'd fall apart. She also knew we'd find our way back, I said. He covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. I let him cry. For once, I didn't try to fix it. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be forgiven. After a long while, he wiped his eyes and looked at me. What do we do now? I closed the album softly. We live. That's what your mother wanted. The sun shifted again, casting light across the table. For the first time in years, it felt like the house was breathing, like it remembered us. I looked at the photo in his hands, then at the empty chair beside me. She always did know how to end a story, I said quietly. David smiled through his tears. Yeah, she did. We sat there a little longer, the air warm, peaceful, alive. Outside, the wind moved through the trees and one of the album's pages fluttered open on its own. It stopped at a picture of us young, laughing, untouched by time. I didn't close it. Some stories aren't meant to end. If this story touched your heart, don't let it fade. Subscribe, share, and tell someone you love what home still means to you, because every memory deserves a second chance. Thank you for watching.